Thanks, Barry. I'm not sure I'll get to this clip. I apologize for my hoarse voice. I would like to take you a year and a half back, beginning of 2011. I was invited to Denver to give some lectures in 3 universities, in Boulder and 2 in Denver. I brought by a Palestinian colleague, Amin Kazak. He gave me the pulpit, one of his classes, and after a short presentation about Israel, I opened the floor for questions and answers. One of the students, with very heavy Arab accent, asked me, when will Israel take out the illegitimate settlements from the West Bank? So I asked him, well, let's first define a settlement. How would you define a settlement? So he said, a settlement is a place where indigenous people were living, foreigners came, kicked them out, and built a new neighborhood. So I asked him when. So he says, regardless of time. So I asked him, okay, let's talk about Denver. Would it fit the description of settlement? A place where indigenous people were living, foreigners came, kicked them out, and bought the new neighborhood, regardless of time. So before we talk about Ariel, let's talk about Denver. And, by the way, if you stick a pickaxe into this ground in Denver, how old would be the oldest American coin which you can find? So he says 230 years. I says, if you stick a pickaxe in Ariel, how old would be the oldest Jewish coin which you can find over there? So he said, I don't know. So he says, look at the Wikipedia, you know, they all sit. So he said, 3,000 years. So I asked him, which city is more non-legitimate, Denver or Ariel, based on time? Okay? Now, this is one incident, because I find myself too much in American academic institutions, but this is, first of all, based on ignorance. They have no clue about the history of this country, and you know what? Jews also. And many, unfortunately, due to the tuition in Jewish day schools, many Jewish students learn in public schools, and the BS which they learn there, I don't want to talk about. Secondly, so leave the myths, take the facts about the land of Israel. Jerusalem, some of you might have watched this clip. You know what, let's see, maybe one segment. The question was about building in Jerusalem.
العربية في جامعة بار إيلان. سيد مردخاي، هذا القرار هل هو دق مزيد من الأسافين في نعش المفاوضات الفلسطينية الإسرائيلية؟
أنا حقيقة لا أفهم هذا الكلام. هل على إسرائيل أن تبحث عن إذن من أين في العالم؟ هذه عاصمتنا منذ 3000 عام، وكنا هناك عندما كان آباؤكم يشربون الخمر ويئدون البنات ويعبدون العزى واللات والمنات، فلماذا علينا أن نتكلم عن هذا الشيء؟ هذه هي مدينتنا من 3000 عام وإلى أبد الآبدين.
يا أخي إذا كنت تريد عفوا سيد مردخاي، عفوا إذا كنت تريد أن تتحدث عن التاريخ، أيضا نحن نتحدث عن القرآن. لا يمكن لك أن تلغي القدس من القرآن. أرجوك أن تبتعد عن الألفاظ التي تسيء للعرب والمسلمين، رجاء لنبقى في موضوعنا. لو سمحت. الآن هذا القرار ألا يتعارض.
لم يرد ذكر القدس في القرآن.
سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده.
ذكر القدس لم يرد في القرآن
طيب
ولو مرة واحدة.
يا سيدي لنتحدث بالسياسة. عفوا لنتحدث بالسياسة.
الجزيرة.
Okay, this is the whole thing. Means, don't argue. You don't have to argue. Just tell them very easily. Show me in your holy from cover to cover, show me one time the word Jerusalem in any of its namings in Arabic. And in Arabic they have 4 names for Jerusalem. Nothing, based on facts. Third, when you talk to Christians, and I do it much, just remind them that Jesus Christ was born Jewish, was living in Jewish neighborhood, was preaching to Jews, and he died as a Jewish martyr. So just remind them, it might make some difference. He was not a Palestinian, as some Palestinians today try to pose Jesus Christ as the first Shaheed. Third, another point, apartheid state. Apartheid state. In South Africa, and many of those who live there know exactly what apartheid means. Different buses for different races, different hospitals, different neighborhoods, different workplaces, banning on marriage, interracial, racial marriage. Nothing of this exists in Israel. So how do you define Israel as an apartheid state where nothing combines Israel with South Africa? Again, facts, leave the myth. Gaza, and this is a question to Brigadier Dangut. Everybody says, okay, give them the West Bank, let them establish a Palestinian state based on the two-state solution. Does anyone in the world have a guarantee that a Palestinian state in the West Bank will not turn into another Hamastan just like Gaza? Let him rise. I'm not sure that Dangot also has a guarantee. So what normal state would agree to such a thing, that another Hamastan will be established near it in the West Bank or in Judea and Samaria? Okay, there are other solutions. The 8-state solution, you can look at this website. But 8-state solution, yes. Go to the website, 8statesolution.com. You'll read everything about this. Don't laugh, I'm not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. A state in Jenin, a state in Ramallah, a state in Shechem, a state in Jericho, Tulkarem, Kalkilia, and the Arab part of Hebron, just like in Gaza, and Israel forever should stay in the rural areas to make sure that those hills do not turn into Hamas hills. This is in a nutshell. Palestinians, everybody says the Palestinians. Excuse me, they carry names like Al-Masri. You know what this means? The Egyptian. Al-Horani, the minister of refugees in Abu Alaa's government. His name was Abdallah al-Horani. Abdallah al-Horani from Syria. He or his parents came. Tarabulsi means he came from Tripoli in Lebanon. Sidawi came from Sidon in Lebanon. Sorani from Tyre in Lebanon. So many names testify that those who call themselves Palestinians are not originally Palestinians. So we have to base our whatever we say on facts, which you can find in any phone guide. However, I must say that we also are to be blamed. We cannot blame the others. What is wrong with us? First of all, as many said, in 2 or 3 weeks, we will celebrate the 64th anniversary of the State of Israel. Right? Right. Wrong. Wrong. The first temple was built 3,012 years ago. This should have been the age of the State of Israel. By saying that Israel was established in 1948 CE, we actually cut the branch on which we are sitting. We should have claimed from the first day of the State of Israel that this state took a vacation of 19 centuries, but this state was established more than 3,000 years ago, and let the others jump in the lake. Second thing, whoever comes to this country usually by airplane, usually lands in an airport which the code is TLV, right? Wrong. It should have been JSM. Jerusalem, not Tel Aviv. First of all, it's in between. I really don't know where it's closer to. Still, from the concept point of view, if you land in Israel, you should know that you land in Jerusalem, not in Tel Aviv. And I have nothing against Tel Aviv. I was born in Tel Aviv. But still, for Israel to be viewed through the mirror of Jerusalem, much more important than to do it through Tel Aviv. And another question, and we are wrong by this. We should have correctified this. Another thing, how many Arabs, Israeli Arabs, serve in the foreign office in Israel? I think handful, maybe even less. Wrong. They should serve, and many would, because they identified with the state, many of them. Another one, what we are responsible. How come we have to hitchhike on Al Jazeera in order to give our message? Why don't we have an international satellite channel in English and in Arabic which will represent our points of view? Why do we have to beg for others to take us on their pickup? Internet sites. Believe me, the internet in Arabic, the internet site of the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, something shameful. There is a guy lives in Ra'anana, a boy who is like 25 years old. He has a website in Arabic 1,000 times better than the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he does it in his free time. And in the ministry, there are some who are getting paid for doing nothing. Next, Israel has friends in the Arab world, starting in South Lebanon Army and many others. I know poets in Jordan, I know people in Yemen, in Morocco. Many Arabs identify with Israel. They do not get any support from this country, unfortunately. And the worst, Israeli academics who go around the world and bash the country and call upon other companies and the institutions to boycott Israel, including their own institutions in this country, to boycott them, to divest from them, and to sanction them. And here, for the appropriate disclosure, I am the president or chairman of the Israel Academia Monitor, who monitors their activity and publishes in public. After all, we do also have the right of speech. However, we should go on assault, on offense, not to defend Israel. For example, just read the example with your permission. First of all, whenever somebody talks to me about colonialism, I have to sort in my mind. If he is a French, I ask him, what are you French still doing in Martinique? For example, isn't this some kind of colonialism? And if he's British, I remind him about Falkland Islands. So look at the mirror before you talk to me about colonialism. Who gives you the legitimacy to ask Israel about colonialism while you are holding to all these places, islands which are 8, 9, and 10,000 miles from your country, while Judea and Samaria is the birthbed of our nation. Second thing, we are passive. We are afraid of the Palestinian Authority, and this I said to Dangot as well. The Palestinian Authority wages a vicious war in order to delegitimize Israel, and Israel does nothing in order to stop this. And Israel has many levers in order to make sure that the Palestinians behave. After all, they eat from our food, and they drink from our water, and they work from our money. And Israel should have done something with them in order to make sure that they don't go in the world and try to delegitimize us. And The last thing. Two last things. Whenever I am asked about the right of return, I say very clearly that I support warmly, I support the right of return of all the Arabs, including the Palestinians, to the Arab Peninsula, where they came from in the 7th century. History did not begin in 1948. Okay? So I highly support the right of return of the Horanis to the Horan, of the Al-Masris to Egypt, and all of them to the Arab Peninsula. There is enough space and enough oil for them all. And the last point. I was invited to York University in Toronto to discuss with Jewish students how to face the Israel Apartheid Week. Some of them say this, some of them say, guys, are you crazy? What do you think? That you will change the minds of those Arabs who are more than sure that Israel is an apartheid state? So I said, so what can you do? I said, very simple. You should arrange an Arab Apartheid Month. And I can give you stuff for every single day. So one of the Jews says, hey, they will be upset. So I asked him, excuse me, aren't you upset when they bash you as an apartheid state? Okay, and this is what I say. What I think we have to change the diskette in our brains from defense ourselves as Jews and Israelis to offense. The others have much more to hide than what we have. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.